We are eager to continue, if you are.
I am. I was thinking at the end of the first session that about this guidance and about being able to see more clearly now in my life, and that it took a lot of years and a lot of time, a lot of experiences for me to be able to step back and to see that there was that the right people were showing up at the right time, and that the guidance was there, and that you have to have kind of a willingness to listen and a determination to not allow other people to dictate to you what your life's purpose is, and that has to come from. I was talking to Esther backstage about just this afternoon. I watched the movie called Jobs, the story of Steve Jobs, and while he behaved in a pretty crass way to many people, there was something inside of him that was an absolute knowing that this is the way this industry has to go, or this is the way this computer business or running his company or something.
And he felt a certain level of frustration because he knew he was in alignment, and was not able to convince the others because they were not in a place to hear him.
And sometimes we find ourselves like in relationships. Like I was in a relationship with my wife for many, many years, and we separated 13 years ago. And it was one of the tough, trying times in my life, probably as close as I ever was to a depression. And yet it isn't always just the things that smell good and the things that look right and the things that make you feel right that make you make those right turns or those about faces and so on. Sometimes it's these enormous obstacles, and you have to almost be fearless.
We want to tease all of you a little bit by saying to you that if you were more unwilling to put up with negative emotion, your lives would go a whole lot better for you.
Well, say that again. That's
You have trained yourself to be willing to endure misalignment, and then you make decisions without the clarity that you're talking about.
Right.
And then you sort of have to go down that path a little ways until what happens, and it's true in the conversation that we had with you about your father, and it certainly is true about how Esther felt when Jerry made his transition into non-physical. After a while, you just get really tired of feeling bad. And we don't think the stakes should be that high. We don't think you should have to let so much momentum go so that you're really feeling bad before you recognize that you could have it another way. You see.
So sometimes it's like to be in a state almost of gratitude for the hardships, for the things that are...
Well, that would take care of everything.
Yeah.
You could stay in a state of appreciation, because appreciation is the way the source within you feels all the time about everything. So it'd be constant, continual, chronic alignment.
Because it was in those moments of despair that I was feeling that when I finally began to be grateful for it instead of feeling sorry for myself, that I became a much more compassionate person. And my writing took on a whole new flavor, and the books that I wrote, and the message. In fact, it was when I wrote The Power of Intention, which was probably 50% of it was impacted by your teachings, by the teachings of Abraham. It's all over that book. I couldn't, because I was very deeply into not allowing myself to continue down this path of despair. And when people are in relationships or in places or in jobs or whatever it is that nothing but despair is showing up, that the risk that we feel about changing it, getting out of it, moving along.
But if you're able to make the correlation between how you're feeling and what thoughts are behind you feeling the way you are, and then realizing that you can change the way you feel because you can change your thoughts, and then events change, then you're off and running. It's just a matter of practicing on purpose thinking and feeling on purpose.
It's almost as if different people start showing up in your life, different circumstances. Carl Jung called it synchronicity.
Depends on what disc you're on. If you're on the Henri disc, Henri ones show up. If you're on the high-flying disc, high-flying ones show up. If you're on the feel sorry for me disc, people show up. Law of attraction never gets it wrong.
So God will send you smarter people if you stop thinking in dumb ways.
So, you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. But knowing what you do want is brief because you just figured it out just now because you knew what you didn't want. And knowing what you don't want is a stronger vibration. So, you don't start thinking about what you do want right away. It's sort of illogical to you. It's not your pattern of thought. So, you think more about what you don't want, which causes you to launch another rocket of what you do want, and another, until there's quite a gap between where you are and what you're asking for, where you are and what the source within you really is. Well, after a while, if your desire is really, really, really strong, in a moment when you're not paying attention and arguing for your limitations, sometimes that desire can triumph. And you can catch a glimpse of who you really are. And that's the benefit. We like to talk about your inner being who is always there with the light on. So let's say you have a lot of friends and they're all over the place in terms of the way they feel. And you are too. So you're sort of zigging and zagging, and sometimes you hang out in a good feeling place together, but not usually. You're just sort of zigging and zagging. And then you figure this out. You start waking up deliberately and finding good feeling thoughts and practice them until other things like them are joining them. And now you're consistently there. Well, your friends have been up and down and all around, but now you're consistently there. Now they're going to rendezvous with you, and you're going to have a teaching moment, you see. That's what your inner being has been doing all along. It always stays there, and sometimes you have that moment where you get it, you see, because words don't teach. It's only life experience that teaches.
It seems like we get almost inundated with bad news. You know, like what we watch on the...
You're on the bad news disc, you do.
Yeah. Well, I find, in the last few years, especially the closer and closer I get to what I think of as divine love, just living from a place of oneness, that I'm not nearly as interested in hearing the news or in hearing other people's sad stories, or there's just a horrible thing just happened in the Philippines where 10,000 people they estimate, but it's come down and so on. But to continuously watch, the horrors of the world and the violence and so on.
Well, without realizing that watching it causes you to practice the vibration of it. And so now you've practiced the vibration of it, so you're going to rendezvous with more of it. And it doesn't mean that you're going to have that horrible experience, but it does mean that more experiences like that are going to come into your consciousness, and they're going to mute your sense of well-being. And then physical friends say, well, it seems like I should not just put my head in the sand. I shouldn't be oblivious to what's going on in the world. And we say we would be a selective sifter. We would do our best to see our world through the eyes of Source, because Source is looking at the expansion. Source is looking at what is wanted. When you define that you want something, Source looks there. And when you look in opposition to what you have defined for Source, you separate yourself from Source. The vibrational frequency of a question and an answer are very different frequencies. And the vibrational frequency of a problem and a solution are very different frequencies. So when you realize Source is on the solution frequency, and when you're not, you feel bad, because you're not going to feel the inspiration. You're going to maybe feel more contrast and maybe launch more rockets, and good can come from it. We just think that it doesn't have to be so hard for so many of you.
But do you have to constantly be aware of the kinds of thoughts that are there? I mean, they just come
No, but you have to care about how you feel. Because if you care about how you feel, when you start down the track that is not in keeping with the Source within you, you'll feel the emptiness, and that's exactly what it is. you'll feel that you have diverged from what Source thinks about this.
That's amazing, because years ago, when I first got a cell phone, I had to put a message on there, and I was very heavy into your work at that time. And so I put an answering on my machine, and it said, this is Wayne Dyer that you've reached, and if your message is designed, and I want to feel good, that's what I said, I want to feel good. And if your message is designed to do anything other than that, you've reached the wrong number. Perhaps you should, maybe you want to call Dr. Phil or someone, who wants to hear bad news. And I've still kept that's still my message on my answering machine, because I want to feel good. Now, thoughts...
That's the message that Source has, too.
Right.